Hey guys, it's Miss Simpson and it's time for social studies today. We are going to learn about the ranch and cattle lifestyle today, all about the frontier of Texas. So let's go ahead and get started. So your assignment today is going to be taking notes on a specific part of this PowerPoint. So when I get to that part, I'm going to tell you, okay, start taking notes now, and I'll tell you what to write down and when to write it. And at the end of it, you're going to take a picture and turn it in. So if you're paying attention and you're taking notes when I tell you to, by the end of this video, you should be done with your assignment. Whoa, I skipped one. Okay, so let's talk about the open range. So Texas was mostly an open range or unfenced prairie land. So it is a place, I don't know, some of you probably have fences for your backyard, but in Texas, we had something called an open range. There were no fences, there was nothing, just for as far as the eye could see, just prairie and fields and grass. And the land and the cattle were pretty much free. They could do whatever they wanted to do. And that is why so many went to the cattle business. It was all open land and a bunch of cows. Nobody owned the cows. Nobody owned the land. So it was kind of just out there for free. So cattle were gathered in something called roundups on the open range, and then they were taken on super long cattle drives. Each of these drives had a specific trail to get the cattle to auction where they would be sold. So the cattle trails, you can see right here, this trail right through the middle of this prairie up close to that hill. Along the trail, sometimes there were stampedes. So stampedes are a herd of frightened cattle running, and they could be very dangerous for cowboys. So I don't know if you've ever seen The Lion King. It's a really sad movie. I know it's really sad, but remember when Mufasa goes to rescue Simba, and Simba is in the he's in like the canyon, and he's in there and he goes rescue, and there's a stampede of I think that was like, I don't remember what, wildebeest, I think, and that's how Mufasa, he ends up dying. That's what a stampede is. So that's real, but that happened to us with cattle, and they would have a stampede, and that could be really dangerous for cowboys. It was dangerous for Simba too. So let's talk about some famous cattlemen. Most of the cowboys back in Texas in the old times, they were men. There wasn't a whole lot of women. But here are the four most popular: Oliver Loving, Charles Goodnight, Bill Pickens, and Richard King. They were really popular, famous cattlemen. But Lizzie Johnson Williams was an important cattle woman. She bought cattle with money she earned teaching and writing. So yes, there was a woman. She was very important. Her name was Lizzie Johnson Williams. Texas soon became famous for their cattle, and we were known as the Cattle Kingdom because we had all this open land, all this free space, and all these cows. And so everybody was just taking these cows and taking this land and becoming cowboys and cowgirls. The largest cattle ranch in Texas was known as the King Ranch in Kingsville, Texas, and it was founded and owned by Richard King, one of the famous cattlemen that we just talked about. So now I'm going to get into a lot of the important people that we have. So this is where you're going to need to take notes. I'm about to tell you about Richard King, Charles Goodnight, and Elizabeth Johnson. You need to write one interesting fact about each of the people. So we're going to start with Richard King, and you're going to write down one thing you find interesting about Richard King. If you don't want to write it from my PowerPoint, you are welcome to Google and see some cool things that he did. He was a pretty cool guy. All of these people were very cool. So you can look stuff up if you want to know more information, or you can choose something that I decide to tell you. But what's something that I'm about to tell you that you find awesome about Richard King? So he was the founder of King Ranch, and it was one of the largest cattle ranches in Texas, and he founded it in 1853. So this started at 15,500 acres with goats, sheep, and cattle, but eventually it just focused on cattle. That is a lot of land. Unfortunately, he did die in 1885 before the ranch achieved its historic renown. It was located in New Essex County off the Gulf Coast, and it was one of the first to fence in his land, to put fence. So his cattle and goats and sheep and all of it couldn't just wander off. And King Ranch is actually still active today, and it is over 825 1,000 acres. So most of you probably live on less than an acre. I know I am buying a house this week, and it is way less than an acre. It is very small, the plot of land that it's on, but most houses are less than an acre if you live in a neighborhood. If you live, a lot of you guys live in the country since you go to Silver Creek. And so you might have 1-2 acres. If you live in like Deer Glade or Deer Ridge, those are about 2-acre lots. So it's more than probably your whole entire neighborhood. Because if the spot that your backyard, your front yard, and your house sits on is only 2 acres, these people own 825,000 acres. That's like over 400,000 houses. That's a lot of land that he owns with all these cows on it. So right now on your paper, I want you to write Richard King and tell me one interesting fact about Richard King that you just learned. All right, so let's talk about Charles Goodnight now. He established J.A. Ranch in Palo Duro Canyon with John Adair in 1876. He was skilled at cattle breeding, and his cattle were among the best in the country. He also raised buffalo, and he was assisted by his wife. And he developed the Goodnight Loving Trail. So I want you to pick an interesting fact about Charles Goodnight on your paper. Write Charles Goodnight and one interesting fact that you have learned about Charles Goodnight. If you don't like any of the facts I gave you, you are more than welcome to look something up. If you know something about Charles Goodnight that I didn't mention, please write it down because I would love to learn from you. Now let's talk about Elizabeth Johnson Williams. I just told you like a few seconds ago, her name, they called her Lizzie Williams. But she was a cattle woman, which was not very common. A lot of them were men that did this kind of work, but she was a woman that did it. She understood the business side from being a bookkeeper, and she used her paychecks to buy her own land and invest in cattle. Remember, she was a teacher and she was a writer, so she decided, okay, well, I'm going to take these paychecks and I'm going to invest in cattle. And guess what? Good thinking, Lizzie, because it became a booming industry. She became an independent rancher with her own registered cattle brand. So yesterday, y'all made your own cattle brands and you drew them and you told me why. So she actually had her own and she actually had it registered. So anytime she branded a cow, that brand, people knew that that was her cow, even if it got out. She was likely the first woman to take her own cattle on the Chisholm Trail independently, which is very, very cool when she was the first woman to do that. So right now on your paper, I want you to write Elizabeth Johnson Williams and then one interesting thing you learned about Elizabeth Johnson Williams right now. All right, so that is all I have for you today about ranch and cattle lifestyle. Tomorrow, I'm going to teach you about the Texas railroads, which is super interesting too. Right down below, I have put a video of the history of King Ranch and the Ford trucks. So I'm going to put that video right down below. So if you're interested and you want to know more about Richard King and Ford trucks, then you can watch that video right down below. It's not required. It's just extra information for you. But remember, you should have 3 facts, one about Richard King, one about Charles Goodnight, and one about Lizzie Johnson or Elizabeth Johnson Williams. And you should turn a picture of that in. All right, guys, I love y'all so much. Have a great day.